Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Weight of Ordinary Days. Grady Massey had always prided himself on noticing details. As a high school history teacher, he'd spent 15 years reading between the lines of student excuses and administrative doublespeak. But somehow, he'd missed the signs in his own home. The marriage had been good once. 8 years ago, Christine Cobb had walked into his life like a perfectly wrapped gift, beautiful, charming, attentive. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, traveled often, and made twice his salary. Grady never minded. He loved his job, loved shaping young minds, loved the quiet satisfaction of a well-taught lesson. But lately, something fell off. It started small. Christine's phone, once casually left on counters, now lived in her purse. Her overnight work trips doubled. She'd started going to the gym at odd hours, coming home smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't hers. When Grady suggested they try for the baby they'd always talked about, she'd snapped at him for the first time in their marriage. "Not now, Grady. My career is at a critical point." Then came the stomach problems. 3 months ago, he'd started experiencing persistent nausea, headaches, and fatigue. His doctor ran tests. Everything came back inconclusive. "Probably stress," the doctor said. "Try to relax more." Grady tried. He cut back on coffee, ate better, started taking vitamins Christine helpfully bought for him. Nothing changed. If anything, the symptoms worsened after she returned from her trips. Last Tuesday, Christine's laptop froze during a video call. She'd cursed, slammed it shut, and asked if Grady could take it to that IT guy at his school. She'd said it with casual indifference, already walking away to pack for another trip. "His name is Lionel," Grady had said to her retreating back. Lionel Hoover had worked at Roosevelt High for a decade, managing everything from the ancient server systems to teachers' personal tech problems. He was a quiet man with sharp eyes and a photographic memory. He and his wife Frida had attended Grady's wedding, and their kids were in Grady's AP history class. Friday morning, Grady dropped off the laptop before first period. "Should be quick," Lionel said, examining the sleek device. "Probably just needs a cleaning and reboot. I'll call you when it's done." Grady taught 3 classes that day: the French Revolution, the Treaty of Versailles, and the fall of the Roman Empire. All lessons about how the powerful always believed they were invincible until the moment they weren't. At 2:15 p.m., during his planning period, his desk phone rang. "Grady," Lionel's voice was tight. "Come to my office. Now, don't mention it to anyone." The IT office was in the basement, a windowless room filled with humming servers and the blue glow of monitors. When Grady arrived, Lionel was standing by the door. His usually calm face looked gray. "Close it," Lionel said. Grady shut the door. "What's wrong?" Lionel didn't answer. He walked to his desk, typed something, then turned the laptop screen toward Grady. "I need you to listen to me very carefully," Lionel said, his voice low and urgent. "You need to file for divorce. Today. Right now. Don't go home first. Don't call Christine. Don't give her any warning whatsoever." Grady's stomach dropped. An affair. It had to be an affair. He'd suspected, but hoped. "It's not just an affair," Lionel said, reading his face. "Grady, I found these." He clicked a folder. Messages filled the screen. Grady leaned closer, reading. His blood turned to ice. "From Christine to T. The new dosage is working. He's getting weaker. Doctor says stress. LOL. Maybe 2 more months. From T to Christine. Good. Don't rush it. We did it too fast with Richard, and people ask questions. Slow is clean. From Christine to T. Policy is $750,000. We split it, then Mexico like we planned. God, I can't wait to be done with this boring life." Grady's vision blurred. He gripped the desk. "There's more," Lionel said quietly. "A lot more. Plans, timelines, research on untraceable poisons. And Grady, there are files about a Richard Cobb, Christine's first husband. He died 5 years ago. Accidental carbon monoxide poisoning." The room spun. Grady sank into a chair. "I've already made copies," Lionel continued. "Everything is on 3 encrypted drives. 1 for you, 1 for the police, 1 for my safe. You need to get to a lawyer before she knows you know." Grady looked up at his friend. She's been poisoning me. Yes. She murdered her first husband. It looks that way. And she's planning to kill me. Lionel's jaw tightened. Not if we stop her first. But Grady, if she even suspects, she might accelerate the timeline. These people are dangerous. This Terrell Munoz, I found his background. He has 2 assault charges that were dropped, and he was questioned in another suspicious death 3 years ago. Grady's hand shook, not from fear, from rage. Pure, cold, calculating rage. His brilliant wife, his charming Christine, was a murderer. She'd lain beside him, smiled at him, kissed him, all while planning his death. I'm not running, Grady said, his voice steady despite the fury. I'm not hiding. Grady. No. He looked at Lionel. She thinks I'm weak. Boring. Easy to manipulate. She thinks she's smarter than everyone. A dark smile crossed his face. I teach history, Lionel. I know how this story ends for people like her. They always make a mistake. They always get too confident. What are you going to do? Grady stood. I'm going to give her exactly what she wants. And then I'm going to destroy her. Chapter 2. The game begins. Grady didn't go home that night. Using cash, he checked into a hotel across town and sat on the bed, staring at the encrypted drive Lionel had given him. His laptop was open, displaying folders full of Christine's messages, research files, and financial documents. He read everything. Christine Massey, née Cobb, born in Baltimore to working-class parents. Dropped out of college twice. Married Richard Cobb at 25. Richard, a successful pharmaceutical rep with a $500,000 life insurance policy. Richard died at 32 of accidental carbon monoxide exposure in his garage. Christine collected the insurance, invested wisely, and moved to a new city. 3 years later, she met Grady at a friend's wedding. Sweet, beautiful, just vulnerable enough to seem real. Grady had fallen hard. They married within a year. She'd taken out a $750,000 policy on him 6 months into their marriage. Just being responsible, she'd said. Grady had signed without question. Terrell Munoz was harder to trace. The messages revealed he was Christine's high school boyfriend who'd reconnected with her through social media. He'd done time for assault, worked sporadically as a personal trainer, and had expensive tastes. The messages between them went back 4 years, meaning they'd started planning before Richard Cobb's death. Grady's hands clenched. They'd probably killed Richard together. The poisoning research was meticulous. Thallium sulfate they'd settled on. Odorless, tasteless, and in small doses over months, nearly impossible to detect. Symptoms mimicked stress-related illness. Most doctors never tested for it. By the time someone thought to check, the victim was usually already dead or too far gone to save. She'd been putting it in his vitamins. Grady looked at the bottle on his nightstand. The vitamins he'd brought with him out of habit. His stomach turned. He threw them in the trash. His phone buzzed. Christine, where are you? Everything okay? He stared at the message. The caring wife, worried about her husband. He wanted to type what he really thought. Wanted to scream at her, expose her, watch her panic. Instead, he breathed and thought like a chess player. Emotion was the enemy of strategy. Sorry, grab a hotel. Not feeling well, didn't want to drive. Be home tomorrow. Oh, honey, do you need me to come get you? Which hotel? She wanted to know where he was. Probably to tell Terrell. Probably to make sure he was actually sick and not suspicious. No, I'm fine. Just need rest. See you tomorrow. He turned off his phone. At 8 a.m. Saturday, Grady met with Vernon McConnell, a divorce attorney Lionel had recommended. Vernon was a bulldog, late 50s, gray mustache, and a reputation for taking down wealthy spouses who thought they were untouchable. This is attempted murder, Vernon said after reviewing the evidence. We need to go to the police immediately. Not yet, Grady said. Mr. Massey, hear me out. Grady leaned forward. If we go to police now with digital evidence, she gets a lawyer, claims the laptop was hacked or the messages are fake. Terrell backs her up. They've done this before and gotten away with it. We need them to act. We need them to incriminate themselves beyond any doubt. Vernon studied him. What are you proposing? I keep pretending everything is normal. Let them think the poison is working. Let them get comfortable and sloppy. Meanwhile, we document everything every interaction, every dose, every meeting they have. We build a case so airtight they can't wiggle out. That's dangerous. If they decide to accelerate, I stop taking anything she gives me. I'll dump the vitamins, avoid any food or drink she prepares. I'll get checked by a doctor immediately and start chelation therapy to remove what's already in my system. Grady's eyes were hard, but I need time. Time to prove Richard's death wasn't an accident. Time to connect Terrell to other crimes. These people have been getting away with murder. I want to make sure they never hurt anyone again. Vernon was quiet for a long moment. You're playing a very dangerous game. I know. And you're sure you can pull this off? Pretend everything is normal while your wife tries to kill you. Grady smiled grimly. I'm a teacher. I've been pretending to be interested in teenagers' excuses for 15 years. I can handle one lying murderer. Vernon's mustache twitched. All right, but I'm documenting everything. And if I think you're in immediate danger, I'm calling the police whether you like it or not. Fair enough. They spent the next 3 hours crafting a plan. Vernon would hire a private investigator to tail Christine and Terrell, document their meetings, and dig into Richard Cobb's death. Grady would install hidden cameras in his house, wear a recording device, and keep detailed logs. They'd also coordinate with Lionel to monitor Christine's laptop and phone remotely. By the time Grady left Vernon's office, he had a strategy. Now he just needed to execute it. He went home at noon. Christine's car was in the driveway. He found her in the kitchen, and the moment she saw him, concern flooded her face. Grady, God, you look awful. Are you feeling any better? He let himself sway slightly. A little, still pretty weak. She rushed over, touching his forehead. Her hand was cool, gentle. The hand of a killer. You're warm. Have you eaten? Not much appetite. Let me make you something light. And you should take your vitamins. She reached for the bottle on the counter. A new one, he noted. She'd replaced the one he took to the hotel. Thanks. He took the bottle, then made a show of clutching his stomach. Actually, maybe after I rest. Feeling nauseous again. Of course. Go lie down. I'll check on you soon. Grady went to the bedroom and closed the door. He dumped the new vitamins in his pocket, then lay on the bed. Through the door, he heard Christine on the phone, voice low. He's getting worse. No. He went to a hotel, but came back. I don't know, maybe a few more weeks. I can't just kill him, T. It has to look natural. Grady smiled at the ceiling. Let her think she was winning. Let them both get comfortable. The real game was just beginning. Chapter 3. Pieces in Position. Over the next 2 weeks, Grady became a different man. By day, he was the weakening husband, complaining of headaches and exhaustion, letting Christine fuss over him while secretly discarding every pill and supplement she offered. By night, he was a strategist, reviewing surveillance footage, coordinating with Vernon's investigator, and piecing together the full scope of Christine's crimes. The private investigator, a sharp woman named Linda Hansen, worked fast. She tailed Christine to 3 separate meetings with Terrell Munoz at a motel outside town. She photographed them together, documented Christine withdrawing large cash sums, and traced Terrell's movements to a storage unit registered under a fake name. Want to know what's in the unit? Linda asked during a meeting in Vernon's office. What? Grady asked. Documents. IDs with different names, fake passports, and some paperwork connected to another death. A woman named Stella Lester in Arizona 3 years ago. She was dating Terrell. Died of a heart condition at 31. Healthy, no prior issues. Sound familiar? Grady's blood ran cold. How many people have they killed? At least 3 that I can prove. Probably more. Linda slid a folder across the table. Richard Cobb, Stella Lester, and they were in contact with a Roy Gross in Nevada who died in a suspicious hiking accident. Roy's sister never believed it was an accident. She's been trying to get the case reopened for years. Vernon leaned back. This is bigger than attempted murder. This is a serial killing team. Grady stared at the photos. Christine and Terrell, smiling, planning, destroying lives without remorse. Rage bubbled up, but he forced it down. Emotion was the enemy. How do we prove it? He asked. We need Richard's body exhumed, Vernon said. If we can prove thallium poisoning, we can reopen his case. Combined with the laptop evidence, Christine's financial records showing large cash withdrawals before each death and the storage unit contents. We can build a pattern. And we need them to make a mistake, Linda added. They're careful, but they're also arrogant. Your wife thinks you're dying quietly. She's already planning her next life. I found emails about property in Mexico, booked under her maiden name. Grady nodded slowly. An idea was forming. What if we gave them a reason to rush? What do you mean? Vernon asked. They're planning to wait another month or two. Let the poison do its work so my death looks natural. But what if I suddenly got a windfall? What if the stakes got higher? Linda's eyes narrowed. You think they'd get impatient? I know they would. Greed is their weakness. Grady pulled out his phone and showed them a text chain with his principal, Roosevelt Goodwin. The school board just approved a grant I applied for, $200,000 for a new history program. The board wants to make a big announcement, maybe even a news story about the innovative teacher who secured funding. Vernon caught on. If Christine thinks you're about to become locally famous, that you'll be under more scrutiny, and if she thinks the life insurance might increase because of the grant, because of my higher profile, Grady's smile was cold. She'll panic. She'll rush. And rushing people make mistakes. It's risky, Linda warned. If they panic, they might try something more direct. That's what I'm counting on. Right now, we have evidence of intent, but not action. We need them to move, to do something overt that we can document and prove beyond doubt. Grady's voice was steady. And I have a plan for that too. He laid it out. The grand announcement would happen in 3 days at a school assembly. Grady would mention casually to Christine that the board was suggesting he increase his life insurance, given his new valuable status, to the district. He'd make her think the payout could double. Meanwhile, Vernon would arrange for Richard Cobb's exhumation and expedited toxicology. Linda would increase surveillance. And Grady would install additional cameras and recording devices throughout the house, including in his own food and drinks, to catch Christine in the act. If she tries to give me a large dose, thinking she needs to finish this quickly, we'll have video evidence, Grady explained. And if she or Terrell try something more direct, an accident, we'll be ready for that too. You're using yourself as bait, Vernon said. I'm a teacher. I've broken up fights, dealt with angry parents, survived school board meetings. Grady's eyes were hard as flint. I can handle 2 murderers who think I'm too weak and stupid to see them coming. The plan was set. Grady went home that night to find Christine cooking dinner, something she rarely did anymore. The smell of garlic and wine filled the kitchen. You're up, she said brightly. I made your favorite. Chicken piccata. Smells amazing. He watched her plate the food, watched her hand linger near his glass of wine. Actually, I have good news. It might help with my mood. Oh, she brought the plates to the table, eyes curious. I got the grant. The big one. $200,000 for the program. He smiled, watching her face. Roosevelt says they might do a press release, maybe even get local news involved. He thinks it could put the school on the map. Christine's smile flickered, just for a second. But Grady saw it. The calculation, the concern. That's wonderful, honey, she said, voice warm. But her eyes were distant, already planning. They ate. Grady pushed his food around, occasionally taking small bites, making sure Christine saw him eating. When she got up to get dessert, he quickly swapped their wine glasses. Later, after she'd gone to bed, claiming exhaustion, he dumped his plate down the disposal and sent Vernon a text. She's rattled. It's working. The next morning, Christine was on her phone constantly. Grady pretended to sleep while she whispered urgently in the bathroom. We need to move it up? I don't care, figure out. No, I'm thinking 2 weeks, maybe less. That afternoon, Linda texted, Terrell just purchased a used car. Cash. Registered to a fake name. They're planning something. And that evening, Vernon called, exhumation approved. Richard's body will be tested next week. Everything was falling into place. Grady stood in his study, looking at the chessboard he'd set up months ago, a game he played against himself on quiet evenings. He'd always loved chess. The patience, the strategy, the way a series of small moves could trap an opponent who thought they were winning. Christine thought she was 3 moves from checkmate. She didn't realize she'd been in Grady's trap for 2 weeks. And now it was time to spring it. Chapter 4. The Closing Net. The assembly was Tuesday morning. Roosevelt Goodwin stood at the podium in the packed gymnasium, hundreds of students and staff watching as he announced the historic grant. When he called Grady to the stage, the applause was genuine. His students cheered. His colleagues smiled. Christine sat in the back row, her smile plastic. Mr. Massey represents everything we value at Roosevelt High, the principal said, clapping Grady on the shoulder. Dedication, innovation, and a real commitment to our students' futures. This grant will fund field trips to historical sites, bring in guest speakers, and create a digital archive. And the school board has asked me to announce that due to Mr. Massey's increased value to our program, they're recommending additional benefits, including an enhanced insurance package. Grady saw Christine's face go pale. After the assembly, teachers congratulated him. Students high-fived him in the halls. But Grady's attention was on his phone, where Linda was texting real-time updates. Christine left immediately after assembly, meeting Terrell at usual spot. They're arguing. Terrell looks agitated. She's crying. He's on his phone. They just left separately. She's heading to a pharmacy. Grady's heart rate picked up. A pharmacy. She was buying something. Something to accelerate the timeline. He taught his afternoon classes on autopilot, his mind racing through scenarios. By the time he got home, he'd prepared himself for anything. Christine was in the kitchen again, baking. Chocolate chip cookies, his mother's recipe, one she'd only made twice in their entire marriage. Thought you'd want comfort food after your big day, she said, kissing his cheek. Her perfume was strong, probably to mask something. You're sweet. He watched her pull the cookies from the oven. They looked perfect. They smelled delicious. They were probably lethal. I have to run to the store, she said, untying her apron. Forgot milk. Eat while they're warm. I'll be back in 20 minutes. The moment her car pulled out, Grady moved. He photographed the cookies from every angle, then carefully placed 3 in evidence bags. The rest he fed to the garbage disposal. He replaced them with cookies from a package he'd hidden in his car. When Christine returned, she found him at the table, a half-eaten cookie on a plate. Good, she asked, watching him intently. Perfect, he smiled, just like Mom used to make. That night, he threw up dramatically, actually just water, but Christine didn't know that. She found him on the bathroom floor, pale and shaking. Oh God, Grady, this is worse. We need to get you to the hospital. No, he gasped. Just need rest. Probably that stomach bug going around school. Are you sure? Please. I hate hospitals. I'll be fine by morning. She hesitated, then nodded. But he saw the satisfaction in her eyes. She thought the increased dose was working. The next morning, Grady called in sick. Christine left for a work meeting, and Linda picked her up immediately. She's not going to work. She's meeting Terrell at the storage unit. Grady met Linda there. They watched from a distance as Christine and Terrell loaded 2 large duffel bags into Terrell's new car. What's in the bags? Grady asked. Linda snapped photos with a telephoto lens. If I had to guess, passports, cash, and their exit strategy. They're getting ready to run. Richard's results come back tomorrow, Grady said. Once we have proof he was murdered, this whole thing unravels. They might not wait that long. Your wife thinks you could die any day now. She's preparing to be the grieving widow who needs to get away to heal. Linda lowered her camera. You need to be careful. If they think you're onto them, they won't. Because tomorrow night, I'm going to give them exactly what they want. Grady explained his plan. Linda's eyes widened. That's insane. It'll work. You could actually die. Not if you're watching. He met her gaze. Trust me. I've got this. That evening, Grady called his sister Rochelle Cannon, who lived 3 states away. She was a nurse, sharp and practical. He'd already told her everything. Are you absolutely sure about this? She asked. I need her on record. I need proof she wants me dead, in her own words. Fine. I'm flying in tomorrow. If anything goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. Just be ready. Thursday afternoon, Vernon called. Richard's results came back. Massive thallium poisoning. Levels consistent with months of exposure. The ME is recommending the case be reopened as homicide. How long until police move? Could be a few days. They're coordinating with the DA, gathering all evidence. Too long. We need to end this now. Grady's voice was firm. Tonight. Everything happens tonight. He went home and found Christine packing a suitcase. What's going on? He asked. She jumped. Oh, just organizing. My trip next week. You're going away again? Just for a few days. But honey, you look terrible. Maybe we should get you checked out. I'm really worried. Actually, I think you're right. I'll make an appointment tomorrow. He swayed, gripping the door frame. But tonight, let's just have a nice dinner. Together. Like old times. Her eyes lit up with something predatory. That sounds perfect. I'll cook. No. He smiled weakly. Let me order us something. Your favorite. That Italian place you love. He ordered delivery and made sure to intercept it before she could. While Christine showered, he plated the food and set the table. Hidden cameras recorded everything. When they sat down, Christine seemed almost giddy. To your success, she said, raising her wine glass. To us, Grady replied. He took a small sip and watched her drink deeply. They ate. They talked about his grant, her work, their future. All lies, all performance. But Grady was the better actor. As the evening wore on, he let his words slur slightly. He accidentally knocked over his water glass. He complained of dizziness. Maybe I should lie down, he said. Yes, absolutely. Christine helped him to the bedroom, her hands gentle. Murderous hands. Christine, he said, looking up at her, if anything happens to me, I just want you to know, you made me so happy. Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt? Regret? No, just satisfaction. Nothing's going to happen to you, she whispered. Just sleep. She kissed his forehead and left. Grady lay in the dark, listening. The moment he heard her bedroom door close, he got up and took the evidence bag from his nightstand, the cookie from 2 nights ago. Laboratory analysis had confirmed concentrated thallium sulfate, enough to kill him if he'd actually eaten it. He texted Linda. Ready? In position. Cameras rolling. Then he called 911. My wife is trying to kill me, he said calmly. I have evidence. She's poisoned me, and she's planning to flee tonight. I need police at my address immediately. And I need an ambulance. I'm going to pretend to be dying to get a confession. Chapter 5. The Long Con. Grady had spent weeks planning this moment. Every detail mattered. Every variable accounted for. He'd learned that from teaching, preparation was the difference between chaos and control. At 9:47 p.m., he began groaning loudly. Christine's door opened. Footsteps in the hall, quick and light. Grady? She appeared in his doorway, backlit from the hall. Are you okay? Can't breathe. He clutched his chest, thrashing on the bed. Something's wrong. She rushed over, but not to help. He saw her check his pulse, efficient and clinical. She wasn't panicking. She was checking if he was dying properly. Hold on, she said, pulling out her phone. But she didn't call 911. She texted someone. Terrell, probably. Please, Grady gasped. Help. You're going to be fine, she said, but her voice was distant. She was thinking, calculating. Just breathe. I'll get help. She left the room. Through the crack in the door, he heard her on the phone. It's happening. I don't know, maybe an hour? No, I'll call 911 in a few minutes, make it look good. Yes, I'm sure. Just be ready to pick me up tomorrow. Grady recorded every word on the device hidden in his shirt. Then he heard something else. A car door. 2 car doors. His heart raced, but not from the fake medical emergency. The police were early. Suddenly, the bedroom lights blazed on. Christine stood in the doorway, but her expression had changed. She looked confused, then terrified, as voices echoed from downstairs. Police! We have a warrant. Her eyes snapped to Grady, who sat up calmly, no longer gasping. What? She started. It's over, Christine, he said quietly. The color drained from her face. She bolted for the window, but 2 officers were already coming up the stairs. She turned back to Grady, eyes wild. You can't. There's no proof. There's all the proof in the world. Grady stood, steady and strong. Your laptop, your messages with Terrell, the storage unit, the thallium in my system and in those cookies you baked. Richard's exhumation showing the same poison. Video of you slipping things into my food. Audio of you planning my death. And let's not forget Stella Lester and Roy Gross. Christine's face crumpled. You weren't supposed to. You were weak, stupid, easy to manipulate. Grady's voice was ice. You underestimated me. They all do. The police entered the room. Christine Massey, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and suspicion of multiple homicides. As they cuffed her, she looked at Grady with something like disbelief. How long have you known? Since the day I took your laptop to Lionel. You got careless, Christine. Probably because you thought I was too boring to notice. Too in love to question. Too weak to fight back. You bastard, she spat. You let me think. You pretended. Yes, I did. Because that's what you did to me for 8 years. The difference is, I'm not a murderer. They let her downstairs. Grady followed, watching as they put her in the back of a police cruiser. Through the window, Christine stared at him, and for a moment he saw her as she really was, not beautiful or charming, just hollow. Mr. Massey? Detective Haywood Santos approached. He'd been part of the coordinated operation. We've arrested Terrell Munoz as well. Caught him trying to board a flight to Tijuana with fake documents and $80,000 in cash. What about the other victims? We're opening investigations into Richard Cobb, Stella Lester, and Roy Gross. With the evidence you provided, we're confident we can prove a pattern. Your wife and Mr. Munoz are looking at life sentences. Multiple life sentences. Grady nodded. Justice. Finally. For Richard, for Stella, for Roy. For all the lives Christine and Terrell had destroyed. Linda Hansen appeared at his side. You did good. Stupid but good. Thanks for having my back. That's what you pay me for. She smiled. Though for the record, I still think you're crazy for using yourself as bait. It had to be airtight. They had to incriminate themselves completely. He looked at the police cruiser. People like her always think they're the smartest in the room. They never consider that the boring teacher might be 3 steps ahead. Vernon McConnell arrived minutes later, and they spent the next 2 hours at the police station, giving statements, providing evidence, coordinating with prosecutors. By midnight, the case against Christine and Terrell was rock solid. When Grady finally left the station, he found his sister Rochelle waiting in the parking lot. You're an idiot, she said, hugging him hard. I know. She could have killed you. She tried. I'm just better at chess than she thought. Rochelle pulled back, studying his face. Are you okay? Really? Was he? His wife had tried to murder him. She'd never loved him, just seen him as a paycheck and a victim. 8 years of lies, manipulation, and slow death. But he'd won. He'd survived. And more importantly, he'd stopped her from killing anyone else. I'm getting there, he said honestly. Ask me again in a year. Fair enough. She linked her arm through his. Come on, you're staying at my hotel tonight. No arguments. As they drove away, Grady looked back at the police station one last time. Somewhere inside, Christine was realizing her perfect plan had crumbled, that her boring, weak husband had outplayed her completely. He smiled. It was grim satisfaction, but it was something. Tomorrow, he'd start to rebuild. Tonight, he'd won. Chapter 6, Unraveling Threads. The next 3 weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, media attention, and revelations. The case against Christine Massey and Terrell Munoz grew stronger every day, and with it came a flood of information that painted an even darker picture than Grady had imagined. Richard Cobb's exhumed remains confirmed massive thallium poisoning. His family, who'd always suspected something was wrong, finally had answers. His sister called Grady personally to thank him. We knew, she said, voice breaking. We told the police something was off about Christine, but they said there was no evidence. Thank you for giving Richard justice. Stella Lester's case in Arizona was reopened. Terrell had been her personal trainer, and they'd been dating for 6 months before her sudden death. Her bank accounts had been empty days before she died. Terrell had been questioned but released due to lack of evidence. Roy Gross in Nevada. His hiking accident was being reinvestigated. He'd been a wealthy software developer who'd met Christine at a conference. They dated briefly. 3 weeks later, he fell from a cliff during a solo hike. Christine had been out of state at the time, but investigators now believed Terrell had done the physical work while Christine established her alibi. Then came a 4th victim, one Grady hadn't known about. Detective Santos called him on a Thursday morning. We found evidence of another one. Antone Knight, Florida, 7 years ago. Christine knew him from college. He died in a house fire. She was the beneficiary of a $100,000 policy. Jesus, Grady breathed. How many people did they kill? We're still digging, but it's looking like at least 4, possibly more. These two have been at this for nearly a decade. The story broke nationally. Teacher outsmarts Black Widow, killer wife, screamed one headline. Husband's brilliant trap catches serial killer couple, read another. Grady refused most interview requests. He didn't want fame, he wanted closure. But he did agree to one, a long-form piece by a true crime journalist named Leslie Lucas who'd covered the Richard Cobb case years ago. What made you realize you could catch them? Leslie asked during the interview. Grady thought carefully. I teach history. I spend every day explaining how empires fall, how the powerful make mistakes, how arrogance leads to destruction. Christine and Terrell thought they were invincible because they'd gotten away with it before. But the pattern was always there. They just needed someone to see it and be patient enough to prove it. Were you afraid? Every day. But I was angrier than I was afraid. These people destroyed lives without remorse. I couldn't let them do it again. What happens now? Now, I heal. I rebuild. And I make sure they never get the chance to hurt anyone else. The trial was set for 3 months out. Both Christine and Terrell faced multiple counts of murder and attempted murder across 4 states. Their lawyers tried to negotiate plea deals, but prosecutors weren't interested. The evidence was overwhelming. Christine's family reached out, her mother sobbing, apologizing, claiming she'd never known. Grady wasn't sure if he believed her, but he accepted the apology with grace. Some burdens weren't his to carry. Meanwhile, Grady's life slowly returned to something resembling normal. He went back to teaching. His students, at first awkward and unsure how to act around him, eventually relaxed when they realized he was still the same Mr. Massey, maybe a little quieter, maybe a little sharper, but fundamentally unchanged. Lionel Hoover stopped by his classroom one afternoon, closing the door behind him. "How are you holding up?" Lionel asked. "Better than expected." Grady gestured to the chair across from his desk. "I owe you everything, you know. If you hadn't found those files, you would have found them eventually. You're too smart not to have noticed something. Maybe, but you gave me time. Time to plan, time to build the case. You saved my life." Lionel nodded. "What you did was risky, but it was also brilliant. You didn't just save yourself. You got justice for people who'd been forgotten." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Lionel said, "Frida and I are having dinner this weekend. You should come. No talk about the case, no heavy conversations. Just food and bad jokes." Grady smiled. "I'd like that." That weekend, surrounded by friends who'd supported him through the darkest time of his life, Grady felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not complete, not perfect, but real. On Monday, Vernon McConnell called with an update. The prosecution is confident. They're going for 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and multiple conspiracy charges. Christine and Terrell are looking at life without parole, possibly multiple consecutive life sentences. "Good," Grady said simply. "There's something else. Roy Gross's sister wants to meet you. She's been fighting for years to prove her brother's death wasn't an accident. She says you gave her hope." Grady agreed. The next week, he met Kelly Russell at a coffee shop. She was in her 40s, fierce eyes, and a determined jaw. "My brother was one of the smartest people I knew," she said. "Everyone said he just made a stupid mistake hiking alone. But Roy was careful. He'd hiked that trail a dozen times. I knew something was wrong." "I'm sorry for your loss," Grady said. "I'm sorry for yours. The difference is, yours didn't die." Kelly's voice hardened. "You stopped them. You made sure they'd pay. That takes strength most people don't have. Your brother deserved justice. They all did. Thank you." Kelly reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for being smarter than they were." As Grady left the coffee shop, he realized something. He wasn't just surviving. He was rebuilding. And from the ashes of betrayal and murder, he was creating something stronger. The trial would come. Christine and Terrell would face the consequences of their actions. And Grady would be there, not as a victim, but as the man who'd refused to let evil win. He'd played the long game, and he'd won. Chapter 7. The Trial of Monsters. The courthouse in downtown was built like a fortress, gray stone, tall columns, and security checkpoints that reminded everyone justice was serious business. On the first day of the trial, news vans lined the street, reporters jostled for position, and curious onlookers filled every available seat. Grady sat in the front row of the gallery, flanked by Vernon McConnell and Linda Hansen. Across the aisle, families of the other victims gathered. Richard Cobb's sister, Stella Lester's parents, Roy Gross's sister Kelly, and representatives from Antone Knight's family. When Christine Massey was led into the courtroom, a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. She looked smaller somehow, diminished in her orange jumpsuit, dark circles under her eyes. Gone was the polished pharmaceutical saleswoman. This was the real Christine, the predator who'd worn a pretty mask. Terrell Munoz followed, hulking and sullen, his jaw set in defiance. He glared at Grady, who met his gaze without flinching. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Hilton Howell, a veteran prosecutor known for never losing a murder case. He was methodical, precise, and utterly relentless. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Howell began in his opening statement. This is a case about greed, about murder, and about two people who believe they were too smart to get caught. Over the span of nearly a decade, Christine Massey and Terrell Munoz killed at least 4 people, possibly more. They poisoned, they staged accidents, they destroyed families. And they did it for money. Cold, calculated, premeditated murder. For insurance payouts, for bank accounts, for the thrill of getting away with it. He paused, letting his words sink in. But they made one critical mistake. They underestimated Grady Massey, a high school history teacher who refused to be their next victim. Instead, Mr. Massey did what law enforcement couldn't. He gathered evidence, built an airtight case, and stopped these killers in their tracks. This trial will show you exactly how Christine Massey and Terrell Munoz committed their crimes. And it will show you why they must never be free again. Christine's lawyer, a slick defense attorney named Isaiah Cannon, tried a different approach. The prosecution wants you to believe my client is some kind of mastermind serial killer, he said, pacing before the jury. But where's the proof? Digital messages that could be fabricated? Circumstantial evidence? My client is a successful businesswoman who made the mistake of having a relationship with the wrong man. Terrell Munoz, the real criminal here. Christine Massey is a victim herself, manipulated by a dangerous man who convinced her to go along with his schemes. It was a desperate strategy. Throw Terrell under the bus and hope the jury bought that Christine was just a pawn. But Grady knew it wouldn't work. The evidence was too strong. Over the next 2 weeks, the prosecution presented a devastating case. Dr. Eddie Kirk, the forensic pathologist who'd examined Richard Cobb's remains, testified about the massive levels of thallium found in his system. This wasn't accidental exposure. This was systematic poisoning over months. Lionel Hoover, the IT specialist, explained how he discovered the incriminating messages on Christine's laptop. The conversations were detailed, methodical. They discussed dosages, timelines, and how to avoid detection. This was clearly planned. Linda Hansen presented surveillance footage showing Christine and Terrell meeting repeatedly, transferring cash, and loading duffel bags into cars. They were preparing to flee the country the day they were arrested. Vernon McConnell read aloud the messages between Christine and Terrell, their cold calculation chilling the courtroom. Richard was too easy. We need to be smarter with the next one. Grady is perfect, quiet, trusting, no family nearby. And the policy is bigger. I'm bored already. How much longer? Patience, baby. The longer we wait, the cleaner it looks. The jury looked horrified. Several wiped tears from their eyes. Then came Grady's testimony. He took the stand calmly, dressed in a simple suit, looking every bit the unassuming teacher Christine had underestimated. Howell walked him through the entire story. The laptop discovery, the shock of learning his wife was poisoning him, the decision to build a case rather than run. Why didn't you just go to the police immediately? Howell asked. Because I knew they'd need more than digital evidence. I'd seen how these cases fall apart when it's just one person's word against another's. I needed Christine and Terrell to incriminate themselves beyond any doubt. I needed to make sure they couldn't hurt anyone else ever again. Were you afraid? Every single day. But fear is temporary. Letting them kill me and move on to their next victim? That would have been unforgivable. Isaiah Cannon cross-examined aggressively, trying to paint Grady as vindictive, manipulative, someone who'd set up his wife. Isn't it true, Mr. Massey, that you were unhappy in your marriage? No, I love my wife, or who I thought she was. Isn't it true you stood to benefit from these allegations? Media attention, book deals. I've refused every book deal and most media requests. I don't want attention. I want justice. Isn't it possible you misinterpreted innocent messages? That you saw what you wanted to see? Grady looked at the jury, then back at Cannon. There's nothing innocent about researching how to poison someone. There's nothing innocent about messages saying 2 more months until he's dead. There's nothing innocent about fleeing the country with fake passports. My wife tried to kill me. That's not interpretation. That's fact. The courtroom erupted in applause. The judge gavelled for order, but the point was made. Chapter 8. The Weight of Truth. The most powerful testimony came from the victims' families. Richard Cobb's sister, Ginger Simpson, took the stand with a box of tissues. I knew something was wrong. Richard called me 2 weeks before he died and said he felt like he was losing his mind. Headaches, fatigue, paranoia. I told him to see a doctor. He said Christine was taking good care of him. Her voice broke. She killed him while pretending to love him, just like she did to Grady. Stella Lester's mother, Darlene Sutton, sobbed through her testimony. My daughter was healthy, vibrant, only 31. Then she met that man. She pointed at Terrell. 6 months later, she was dead. Heart condition, they said. My Stella never had heart problems. Never. And her money was gone. All of it. Roy Gross's sister Kelly testified about her years of fighting to prove her brother's death wasn't an accident. Roy was an expert hiker. The idea that he just fell is absurd. But no one would listen. Until Mr. Massey proved there was a pattern. The evidence against Terrell Munoz was equally damning. The prosecution presented his financial records showing large deposits after each victim's death. They showed his purchase of fake IDs, his research into poisons and accidents, his history of violence. A former cellmate testified that Terrell had bragged about pulling off the perfect crimes and using women to do the dirty work while he stayed clean. Terrell's lawyer, a public defender named Abdul Maldonado, tried to argue his client was just Christine's lackey, following orders. But the evidence showed Terrell was an active, willing participant, possibly even the mastermind. The final piece of evidence was the cookies, the ones Christine had baked for Grady with enough thallium to kill him. Dr. Eddie Kirk testified about the toxicology. If Mr. Massey had eaten even one of these cookies, he would likely be dead within hours. This was not a gradual poisoning attempt. This was attempted murder with a massive, lethal dose. Christine's face went white. Terrell stared at the table. After 3 weeks of testimony, closing arguments began. Hilton Howell addressed the jury one final time. You've heard the evidence. You've seen the messages, the surveillance, the forensics. Christine Massey and Terrell Munoz are serial killers who murdered at least 4 people and attempted to murder a 5th. They showed no remorse, no hesitation, no humanity. They destroyed families for money. They planned, they executed, they tried to flee. The only reason they're sitting in this courtroom instead of enjoying their blood money in Mexico is because one man, Grady Massey, was smart enough, brave enough, and determined enough to stop them. Do your duty. Find them guilty on all counts. Make sure they never harm anyone again. Isaiah Cannon made his final appeal. Yes, Christine made terrible choices. Yes, she was involved with a dangerous man. But she is not the monster the prosecution describes. She's a woman who got caught up in something she didn't fully understand, manipulated by Terrell Munoz. Show mercy. Consider the possibility that she's a victim too. It rang hollow. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. When they returned, the verdict was clear. Guilty, on all counts, for both defendants. Christine collapsed, sobbing. Terrell's face hardened into a mask of rage. The courtroom erupted. Families of victims hugging, crying, finally getting the justice they'd fought for. Grady sat quietly, feeling the weight of it all. Relief, grief, exhaustion, and something like peace. Chapter 9. Phoenix Rising. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge, a stern woman named Barbara Weiss, reviewed the case with clinical precision. Then she addressed the defendants. Christine Massey, Terrell Munoz, you have been found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted first-degree murder, along with multiple conspiracy charges. The evidence presented in this case is among the most disturbing I've encountered in 30 years on the bench. You killed people who trusted you, loved you, believed in you. You destroyed families. You did it for money, and you showed no remorse. She paused, letting the words settle. This court sentences you, Christine Massey, to 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 25 years for attempted murder. You will die in prison. Christine wailed. Her mother, sitting in the back, covered her face. Terrell Munoz, you received the same, for consecutive life sentences without parole, plus 25 years. You will never walk free again. Terrell finally showed emotion. His face crumpled, and he slumped in his chair. Bailiff, remove the defendants. As they were led away, Christine looked back at Grady one last time. He met her gaze without anger, without satisfaction, just finality. It was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Grady declined to make statement. He simply stood with the families of the other victims, united in their grief and relief. Kelly Russell hugged him. Thank you. You gave us closure. Ginger Simpson squeezed his hand. Richard would be grateful. We all are. Vernon McConnell clapped him on the shoulder. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, Grady corrected. All of us. That night, Grady sat alone in his house. The house he'd shared with the killer. The house where he'd almost died. It felt different now. Lighter. Like exorcising a ghost. His phone rang. It was Roosevelt Goodwin, his principal. Grady, just wanted to check in. How are you holding up? Better than expected. Tired, but better. Good. Because I have a proposition. The school board wants to create a new program. A course on critical thinking, evidence analysis, and practical logic. They want you to design and teach it. Grady smiled. Based on recent events? Let's call it inspired by. You showed everyone what careful observation and strategic thinking can accomplish. We think students should learn those skills. I'd be honored. 3 months later, Grady stood in front of a new class. Critical analysis and strategic thinking was written on the board behind him. This course, he began, is about patterns. How to see them, how to analyze them, how to respond to them. It's about not accepting things at face value. It's about asking questions, gathering evidence, and thinking 3 steps ahead. The students watched him intently. Some of you know my story. You know what happened to me. But this class isn't about revenge or vigilante justice. It's about the power of observation, the importance of evidence, and the value of patience. Because the truth always emerges if you're smart enough and patient enough to uncover it. One student raised her hand. Mr. Massey, were you scared? Every day, he answered honestly. But fear is just information. It tells you something is wrong. What matters is what you do with that information. Do you regret it? Playing the long game instead of just running. Grady thought for a moment. If I'd run, Christine and Terrell would have found another victim. Someone else would have died. So no, I don't regret it. I'm proud that I had the strength to stop them. The class nodded, absorbing his words. That afternoon, Grady received an unexpected visitor. Lionel Hoover, carrying a gift-wrapped box. What's this? Grady asked. Open it. Inside was a beautiful chess set, the pieces carved from dark and light wood. You're a hell of a chess player, Lionel said. You saw the board, planned your moves, and executed perfectly. Thought you deserved a proper set. Grady smiled, genuinely touched. Thank you. And there's something else. Lionel pulled out an envelope. Richard Cobb's family asked me to give you this. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a letter. Mr. Massey, we received Richard's life insurance payout, which Christine never touched before her arrest. We want you to have some of it. You gave us justice when no one else would. You honored Richard's memory. Please use this to rebuild your life, to find happiness again. You've earned it. The Cobb family. Grady's eyes stung with tears. I can't accept this. You can, and you will. They insisted. So did Stella's family and Roy's sister. They all contributed. Consider it a thank you for stopping serial killers' fund. Lionel, take it. You got a second chance at life. Build something beautiful with it. That weekend, Grady used part of the money to take a trip, the first real vacation he'd had in years. He visited national parks, historical sites, places he'd only taught about but never seen. He breathed fresh air, watched sunsets, and slowly, carefully began to heal. 6 months after the trial, he received a letter from Christine. It had been screened by prison officials, and Vernon had advised him not to read it. But curiosity won. Grady, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know something. I did love you. Maybe not the way I should have, maybe not enough to stop. But there were moments when I wished I could be the person you thought I was. You were always too good for me. Too kind, too trusting, too decent. That's why you were the perfect target. But it's also why you won. You're a better person than I could ever be. I hope you find happiness. Real happiness with someone who deserves you. I'm sorry. Christine. Grady read it twice, then filed it away. He didn't respond. Some doors needed to stay closed. A year after the trial, Grady attended a support group for people who'd survived domestic violence and attempted murder. He met others who'd faced similar betrayals, and he shared his story. The hardest part, he told the group, wasn't the fear or the danger. It was accepting that the person I loved never really existed. Christine was always a predator. I just couldn't see it. A woman nodded. How did you move past that? By realizing it wasn't my fault. I trusted someone I shouldn't have, but that doesn't make me stupid or weak. It makes me human. And I survived. I fought back. I won. That's what matters. The group applauded softly. 18 months after the trial, Grady met someone new. Her name was Anna Blackwell, a librarian at Roosevelt High who'd recently transferred from another district. She was quiet, kind, and had a dry sense of humor that made him laugh. They started with coffee, then dinners, then long walks discussing books and history in life. She knew his story. Everyone did. But she saw him as Grady, not as the teacher who caught the Black Widow killer. I'm not looking for a hero, she said one evening. I'm looking for someone genuine. And you're the most genuine person I've met. I've got baggage, Grady warned. We all do. Yours just made national news. She smiled. I can handle it if you can. 2 years after the trial, Grady stood in front of his class, teaching a lesson on resilience through history. Students filled the room, engaged and curious. After class, one student lingered. Mr. Massey, I just want to say, you inspired me. To be smarter, to pay attention, to not let people take advantage of me. Grady smiled. That's the greatest compliment you could give me. You're kind of a legend, you know. I'm just a teacher who got lucky. No, the student said firmly. You're a teacher who refused to be a victim. That's different. That evening, Grady sat on his porch, a new house in a new neighborhood, far from the memories of Christine. Anna sat beside him, reading a book. The chess set Lionel had given him sat on a small table, a game in progress. His phone buzzed. A news alert. Christine Massey and Terrell Munoz linked to sixth victim. Investigation ongoing. Grady read it, then put the phone away. That chapter of his life was closed. Justice had been served. The monsters were caged. He'd played the long game, and he'd won. Not just survival, but a second chance at life. A real life built on truth and strength and hard-earned wisdom. He looked at Anna, who glanced up and smiled. Penny for your thoughts? She asked. Just grateful, he said simply. For second chances. For justice. For this. She took his hand. Me too. As the sun set, Grady felt something he hadn't felt in years. Genuine peace. The kind that comes from facing darkness and emerging stronger. From being underestimated and proving everyone wrong. From refusing to be a victim. Christine and Terrell were in prison, where they'd spend the rest of their lives. For families at closure. And Grady Massey, the unassuming history teacher they tried to kill, had built a new life from the ashes of their betrayal. He'd won, not with violence or vengeance, but with intelligence, patience, and unwavering determination. And that, he thought as Anna squeezed his hand, was the best victory of all. Epilogue. 5 years later, Grady published a book, The Long Game: How Patience, Evidence, and Strategy Saved My Life. The proceeds went to organizations supporting victims of domestic violence and helping families reopen cold cases. Christine and Terrell remained in prison. Additional investigations linked them to 2 more deaths, though those cases were harder to prove. They never spoke to each other again. Grady married Anna in a small ceremony surrounded by friends and family. They honored the memory of Christine's victims by establishing a scholarship fund in their names. And every semester, Grady taught his critical thinking class, inspiring a new generation of students to question, analyze, and never accept things at face value. He'd turned his darkest chapter into his greatest lesson, and he never played a game of chess without thinking about the day he checkmate a killer. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.